Most of what you call reality doesn't come from the outside. It's created inside. Your brain interprets the world through past experiences, old beliefs, hidden patterns. Research shows, about 95% of our thoughts are repetitive. And most of them are negative. So what you think you see out there is often just a reflection of what's already happening within. Imagine this: two people lose their jobs on the same day. One falls into despair, convinced he's lost everything. The other sees an opportunity, a chance to start fresh, to grow. The difference isn't in what happened. It's in the meaning they gave it. One believed his value was his position. The other realized, work doesn't define who he is. Same event. Two completely different realities. What does this mean? You don't react to events themselves. You react to the story your mind tells about them. If that story is built on old fears, past trauma, or limiting beliefs, life feels more chaotic than it really is. But here's the key: this cycle isn't final. Thoughts can be rewired. The moment you start watching them, without identifying with them, you gain a new freedom of choice. And that leads us to the next question: why do you keep getting stuck in the same patterns, even when you know better? Why do you act on autopilot? And how do you break free without losing control of your life? You've noticed it yourself. Even when you want to change, you fall back into the same behaviors. You always react the same way when someone disagrees, when you feel rejected, when you lose control. This isn't about willpower. It's autopilot. The brain saves energy by turning emotions and behaviors into unconscious habits. A Duke University study found, about 40% of our daily actions aren't conscious choices. They're automatic routines. Almost half of what you do every day is repetition. Take someone who avoids conflict. As a child, they learned speaking up leads to fights. So they stayed quiet. Now, as an adult, even in moments where they should speak firmly, they stay silent, not by choice, but by habit. The pattern became automatic. That's how most of life is shaped: how you face challenges, how you deal with disappointment. Mental scripts built over years now play on repeat. The good news? Autopilot can be turned off. It won't happen magically. The first step is awareness, noticing in the moment when the same reaction kicks in again. That awareness alone creates space. Space to choose a different response. One of today's biggest sources of anxiety is the constant need to control what can't be controlled: outcomes, the future. And the more you try to control, the more insecure you feel. Why? Because the human brain hates uncertainty. It prefers a bad but predictable scenario over the unknown. That's why people stay in jobs they dislike or relationships that make them unhappy. It feels safer. But in truth, that control is an illusion. You can plan, prepare, do your best, but you'll never control how others act, what happens tomorrow, or forces beyond your reach. Trying to control others, their behavior, their words, their choices, rarely works. Instead, it leads to frustration, conflict, burnout. Some people overthink every detail, reread a message 100 times before sending it, try to predict every outcome. But this doesn't bring peace. It creates more stress. Research shows, people with high control-seeking tendencies feel more anxious and struggle more with frustration. Here's the shift: realizing you're not in full control doesn't mean giving up. It means focusing on what's truly yours to influence: your choices, your reactions, your attitude. Silence sounds simple. But for many, it's unbearable. Spend just a few minutes without distractions, and unease creeps in. That's why, the moment there's free time, most people grab their phone, turn on the TV, or fill the air with noise. Why? Because silence brings up the inner noise. It surfaces what you've been avoiding: insecurities, fears, disappointments. That's why it feels scary. It reveals what daily busyness hides. A University of Virginia study found, many people preferred giving themselves small electric shocks rather than sitting quietly for 15 minutes. That's how deeply we avoid facing our own minds. Think of someone always busy. They look productive. But the moment they stop, they feel emptiness they can't explain. So they keep filling their schedule, not out of need, but to escape that inner vacuum. This constant escape keeps the mind restless, never present. The result? Exhaustion, lack of clarity, a sense of dissatisfaction. The key is to change how you see silence. Not as something to avoid, but as a doorway inward. It doesn't mean hours of meditation. It means slowly learning to sit with your inner rhythm, without rushing to fill it. Being present isn't mystical. It's practical. It means paying attention to what's happening right now, instead of drifting to the past or worrying about the future. Simple, but rare. How many times have you been physically in one place but mentally far away? The brain is trained to wander. We live in anticipation, solving problems that don't exist yet. A Harvard study found, people spend about 47% of their time thinking about something other than what they're doing. And the more it happens, the less happy they feel. The good news, you can train presence. One of the simplest tools is mindful breathing. Pause for a minute. Focus only on the inhale, then the exhale. That's enough to break the thought loop and return to now. Another tool is a body scan, bringing awareness to different parts of the body, one by one. These practices take just a few minutes. But over time, they shift how you respond. You start noticing when autopilot takes over. And you gain space to choose differently. Presence isn't just for inner peace. It's the starting point for any real change. There's a fundamental difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable, it's part of life. Losses happen. Disappointments come. But suffering is the layer we add on top of pain. When you allow yourself to feel pain, in time, you can move forward. But when you turn that pain into an identity, it becomes suffering. The second wave, beyond the pain itself, fuels thoughts like, I'll never be happy again, this always happens to me, I'm not good enough. This is real suffering. And it's not necessary. Research confirms the difference between pain and suffering. One study showed that how we interpret negative events directly affects the intensity and duration of our suffering. In other words, what keeps you in pain is not the event itself, but the meaning you give it. It's not about ignoring the pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about not letting it become part of your identity. Because then any attempt to change feels like a threat to yourself. The path is different, allow the pain to be, don't resist it, observe your feelings, name your emotions, and accept that feeling is not weakness, it's presence. This is what reduces the power of suffering. When you fight pain, it only lasts longer. Attachment is not just about relationships. It's about expectations, about wanting things to be exactly as you imagined. The more you cling to a fixed idea of how life should be, the more you suffer when reality doesn't match your expectations. This applies to everything, plans that didn't work out, people who don't behave as you hoped, even the self-image you created yourself. Attachments are mental constructs that turn into emotional prisons. For example, someone works for years in a job that no longer has meaning. They know it, feel it every day, but remain attached to the idea that changing paths is failure. Here, the attachment isn't to the job, it's to the identity built around it. Another common example is attachment to control in relationships. A person believes that if the other changes, everything will be okay. And again, they get disappointed when reality doesn't match the story. Psychological research shows, the higher the level of emotional attachment, the stronger the perceived suffering. Because attachment ties your peace to things outside your control. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting that you can't control everything, and that your inner peace can exist independently of external circumstances. When you stop insisting that everything must be exactly as you want, space opens up. Space to live life as it is, not as you imagined it. The way you talk to yourself affects everything: your mood, your decisions, your confidence. And the surprising thing is, this inner dialogue happens almost unnoticed. Think about it: many people constantly scold themselves, judge themselves, compare themselves to others. These thoughts seem small, but they have real effects. Studies show that people with negative self-talk experience more stress and are more prone to anxiety and depression. It's like living with a constant critic in your head. For example, someone forgets an important meeting. A healthy inner voice would say, "It happens. What can I do now to fix it?" But many hear, "I'm a failure. Now nobody will trust me." This kind of self-talk doesn't solve the problem. It only adds guilt and paralyzes action. This is where reprogramming your inner dialogue begins. It's not self-deception or meaningless positive phrases. It's about questioning automatic thoughts and replacing judgment with helpful questions. For example, instead of, "I never get it right," ask, "What can I learn from this?" It seems simple, but changing your language changes your reactions to life. You can't stop the flow of thoughts completely. But you can change the tone you use with yourself. And that changes everything: how you handle challenges, even your mental health. Resilience isn't about silent endurance. It's the ability to turn pain into something useful. When you understand this, you stop seeing difficulties as obstacles and start seeing them as part of growth. Imagine someone who suddenly loses their job. The first reaction is despair and disappointment. But over time, this experience can become a turning point. There are cases where people, after losing a job, started their own business, changed fields, or found a path more aligned with their true self. It wasn't easy, but it was possible. And it changed lives. Research shows, those who faced difficult challenges and were able to reframe them reported higher long-term life satisfaction. The pain didn't disappear, it became a catalyst for change. This is what separates those who break from those who grow stronger. It's not the absence of pain, but how you use it. The right question in such moments isn't, "Why me?" It's, "What can I do with this now?" And remember, resilience isn't born in the middle of a crisis. It's built beforehand, through small daily choices. Taking care of your emotional state. Developing self-awareness. Creating space between stimulus and response. Inner peace is not accidental. It comes from small decisions you make every day, not reacting automatically, just observing, taking a deep breath instead of exploding, disconnecting for a few minutes to reconnect with yourself. These simple, consistent actions shape your relationship with the world. Imagine someone criticized at work. They are exhausted and under pressure. They could go home and pour their frustration onto loved ones. Or they could notice their feelings, pause, and take a breath before speaking. This is a choice. And it changes everything. Neuroscience shows that the brain is plastic. The more you practice a new response, the stronger it becomes. This applies to both impulsive habits and conscious responses. Practicing presence, changing your inner dialogue, learning to let go, all of this requires repetition. Understanding isn't enough. You must apply it. And most importantly, accept that it won't always be easy. You will make mistakes, get lost, forget. But each time you choose to return, even after a slip, you strengthen your path. Step by step, it leads to peace, independent of external circumstances. And here everything connects. Because if you've reached this point, you're no longer where you started. The awareness you've gained is your advantage. The decisions you make from here will shape your next step. Peace isn't in the future. It begins in how you choose to live this moment.